Okay, hello everyone. Hopefully you are doing good today. On our today lecture, we are going to talk about human body tissues. Okay, so let's begin. The first one, we need to know the type. The first type of our tissues, we call it as epithelial tissue. Also, we can call them as epithelium. And the work of epithelium is to cover body surfaces and also organs and line somebody's cavity. Yeah, maybe the detail you can see it a bit later. And then the second one, we have what we call as connective tissue. And the function of these tissues is to bind and also to support the body parts. The third, we have what we call as muscular tissues. And the function of muscular tissue mostly for contraction. And then the last, we have nervous tissue, which is to respond to stimuli and also to transmit some impulse from one body part to another body parts. Okay, so basically like this. Even though our body seems so complicated, but if we see the type of the tissues, we have only four, which is epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscle tissues, and also the last is nervous tissues. Right, so now we'll see the detail one by one. So let's begin with this. This is what we have as nervous tissue. So nervous tissue, it actually can be found in all over of our body. But in major concern, we can talk about the tissue in our brain and also spinal cords. Okay, that is the nervous tissue. And then epithelial tissue also can be found mostly anywhere in our body. But the key term for epithelial tissue is that the tissue always found on the surface of the body. For example, in this case, we can find the surface of our skin, and then we can also find in the surface of our digestive tract, and then we can also find the surface of our respiratory organs. So mostly everything on the surface will be wrapped by epithelial tissues. And then the third, we have what we call as muscle tissues. And muscle, we have three types in general. They are muscular, or we can call as skeletal muscle that we can find in our muscle, yes, to move our body. And then the second one, we can find it in our internal organ, and the name we call it as smooth muscle. Smooth muscle can be found in intestine and stomach, it's like that. That is smooth muscle. And then the last and the one and only the type of muscle, we can find it in our heart. And this type of heart, we call it as cardiac muscle. Right. So now we will go to the next tissue, which is the last, is connective tissue. So connective tissue, in terms of type, this is the most tissue with having so many types. So in this case, let's see the example. We have fat here. Fat is the type of connective tissue, and then bone also connective tissue, tendon also connective tissue. But other than that, connective tissue, we can find it in blood also connective tissue. Okay, so simply say connective tissue is the most tissues in our body from the four general here, with the very or the most tissue with having so many types. Okay, so that is the connective tissues. Okay, so now we'll see a bit more detail. Now we will see the muscle tissues. Again, I have told you before that the type of muscle consists of three. They are cardiac, skeletal, and also smooth muscle. Okay, so now let's see from the cardiac one. Cardiac one is so special because it's only can be found in our heart, and the uniqueness of this muscle is that it has a structure that having a branch. As you can see like this, it has a branch. So one muscle cells with another muscle cell, it has a branch. Okay, so that is the unique of this cardiac muscle. So again, the unique characteristic is branching. And then it has striated cell. So what is striated? It has a line, tiny little line here. So this tiny little line, we call it as striated. And then common location, again, that's the wall of the heart. And then the function, everybody know, I believe, the function of the heart, which is to pumping the blood into our circulatory system, or to transfer the blood to our entire body. So this is the detail. So when you want to try to find it, so you will find it around here. Okay, this is the wall of our heart. So if we enlarge them, we will find the characteristic of the muscle like this. And in terms of the nucleus, it has a nucleus like this on the center. And then again, yeah, they have a branch like this. Okay, so this is the striated. Yeah, I think it should be okay for this. Okay, next up, we have what we call a skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle, in terms of appearance, it's almost similar because it also striated. So striated is like this, having line like this, right? So that is the striated one. And then it has also the characteristic which is long. But the difference with the previous one, it doesn't have a branch. So no branch in this case. And then another characteristic of this type of muscle, it has what we call as multiple nuclei. So it has more than one nucleus in one cell. And then the location, of course, this is the muscle that we commonly know, which is in our body, the muscle that is attached to our bone, and the function is for contraction. Okay, and the contraction is voluntary, means we can control them. The previous one, the cardiac muscle, we cannot control it, right? Because it's automatic, so we cannot control. But this type of muscle, which is skeletal muscle, we can control it very well. So we can move it as we want, right? So this is the muscle. Okay, so if we see a bit more detail, it will have a structure like this. And the detail of the structure, I'm gonna talk a bit more on the next lecture on muscle system. So for now, we just concern on the tissues. Okay, now is the last of muscle. We have what we call a smooth muscle. And the smooth muscle, like I told you before, it can be found in any our internal organs, such as intestine, such as stomach, and then such as many other internal organs like respiratory tract. And the type of this muscle has a unique shape, which is the shape is like this. So tiny little things like this, and then it has long. Yes, the shape is long. And the unique thing that I told you is this is the name. The name is spindle shaped shell. So the look things like this, we call it a spindle shape. And then in terms of nucleus, it has only one nucleus only. Okay, common location in hollow organs like stomachs. Yeah, we will see again. And then the function mostly to help the movement in our internal organs, like the movement of our intestine, the movement of our large intestine. It's helped by the existence of smooth muscle. Okay, so this is the smooth muscle. So in our stomach, so we can have this type of smooth muscle. So the first like longitudinal muscle layer, and then we have the circular, and then the last we have oblique. So this one we are not going to talk for now. So but in general, those three type of muscle are smooth muscle. Smooth one. Okay, good. So that's all about muscle. Now we'll have epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissue, based on the appearance or based on its shape, it can be categorized into three types of epithelial tissue. The first one is squamous. Squamous is like, what should I say? It's scale-like, scale. So it's like a scale. And then the second one we have cuboidal. Cuboidal is like a cube. So why the name is cubo? Cubo is like a cube. And then the third, we have what we call as columnar. Columnar is like column, you know, so it's like a long cell, so it's columnar. And then based on the number of the layer, we have two types. The first is simple or only one layer, so only one layer thin. And then the second one we have stratified. So stratified, it's categorized based on the number of the layer, which is more than one layer. Okay, so now we will have a look a bit more details. So this is, like I told you before, squamous seems like a scale, cuboidals is like a cube, and then columnar is mostly a long type of cells like this. Okay, so now we have simple squamous epithelia, and the simple one we can find it in mostly in a single layer cell that usually for mostly for transmission or the movement of substance. Mostly the function is related to that things like diffusion, things like that. So when the substance move from another part to the other part, so this is the things that happen with simple squamous. And the example is that we can find it in air sac, okay, air sac in our respiratory system, and also in a blood vessel, yes. Okay, so now we give you example on a blood vessel. So the squamous here will be around here. It's only tiny layer around here. Okay. Next, we have simple cuboidal epithelia, and this type because it, of course of its shape, and then in some cases they can have microvilli on the free surface, but in some cases, not all. And then the common location we can find it in gut lining, and then some of the part of the respiratory tract, and then we can also find it in kidney, you know, kidney. So, and because we can find it in kidney, in terms of function, it's almost similar with the previous one. So it can be used for secretion and also absorption. So this is the example. We can find it, the cuboidals, in our kidney. So the things that we mostly talk about, urine transfer or urine production. So the layer in this urine production made from cuboidal cell. Okay, good, I think. Now we have simple columnar. So columnar is this type of cell, which is quite long in terms of appearance. So simple columnar means only one layer, and then it can be found in mostly our internal organs such as intestine, and it's in some cases they can have what we call as microvilli, and this function is also still similar with the previous one, which is for secretion and also absorption. Okay, so this is the example of the columnar epithelia. We can find it in our intestine, and on the top of the surface we can find a villi. You know why its villi is there? Because villi is very useful for absorption. In our small intestine, we have many villi in the surface of our the epithelial cell. Why? Because it will increase the surface for the absorption of the nutrients. Right, so let's move now. Now we have stratified. So stratified means more than one layers, and more than one layers in our body we can find it in simply say skin. Yes, the surface of our skin we can find it this type of squamous epithelia. Okay, so this is what we have. Why it's become stratified? Because it has more than one layer, starting from this layer, this layer, this layer, this layer. So consists of more than one layer. That's why it's become stratified. And squamous, why it's squamous? Because the shape is like a scale. So more than one layer, and it shapes like a scale. And the example we can find it in our skin. Okay, good. Next up, we have what we call as pseudo stratified. And why it's pseudo? Pseudo means what should I say? Not true, you know. Pseudo is not true. So this why it's pseudo, because it seems like stratified but actually not. Okay, so that's why the name is pseudo. So in this case, maybe it's shaped like this. Some of the cell like this, some other cell is like this, and then some of the cell is like this. So it's actually one layer, but seems like more than one layer. That's why the name becomes pseudo. Pseudo is not true or not real. Oh, sorry, not true. Okay. And this type of tissue, we can find it in our windpipe, and also in brain. So in our trachea, you know. Okay, this is the trachea. So we can find it this one. Oh, this one is a good example of what we call a pseudo, you know. This one is this long, and the other tissue only this. Okay, yeah, this is the example of pseudo. Good, I think. Yes, long, short, long, short, but it's only one layer, even though seems like stratified. Okay, I think this one is perfect. Now we have connective tissue. Like I told you before, connective tissue having so many types of tissue. In general, they have 6 types. The first is loose connective tissue, and then second, dense connective tissue, and then we have adipose. So adipose is fat, you know, so it's fat tissue. And then the next we have blood, followed by cartilage, and the last we have bone. Okay, so now let's see one by one. Loose connective tissue. So loose connective tissue, why it say loose? Because it has more space in some of the number of fiber. And the fiber in this case is made by fibroblast. So fibro is fiber, so making fiber. So the cell that is making fiber, we call it as fibroblast. And loose, once again, because it has like this, you can see it has many space, right? So that's why it's become loose. And the location for loose connective tissue, we can find it under our skin and most epithelia. So under of epithelia, the bottom of epithelia, mostly we can find it this connective tissue. And then the function is to support, and the next for elasticity. Okay, so this is what we can found in terms of the connective tissue, especially the loose one. We can find it in our skin. Underneath the skin, there is what we call as loose connective tissue. And yeah, another name we can also call them as areolar tissue. And the things that is important here is they consist of many collagen and also lenticular and elastic fiber, and also variety of cell, and one of the cell is the fibroblast. And the things related to this is that when you are getting older, the number of tissue will be less, and then that's why you will have a wrinkle on your skin. Okay, next we have dense connective tissue. So in terms of dense, slightly almost similar with the previous one. So what makes difference, it's only the space. So in this case, the fibroblast makes more collagen fiber, which is more than the previous one. That's why it's become so tight and also so dense. That's why the name become dense connective tissues. And we can find it in many places in our body. Some of them, the easiest one to recognize, we can find it from the tendons. Okay, and then in terms of function, it's almost similar like previous one, which is for support and elasticity. Other than tendons, we can find them also in skins and also in kidney capsule. So some of the part that wrap the kidney, that's made from dense connective tissue. So let's see in our tendon. So tendon is like this. It's actually a dense connective tissue that bind the muscle into the bone. Okay, and also we can find on ligament also dense connective tissue. Okay, next up we have adipose tissue or fat tissue. This type of tissue can be found in many places, and most importantly underneath the skin. Why underneath the skin? Because it has a function to insulate the body temperature. So the adipose fat, it has a function to make our body warm. And other than that, this is also the function of body tissue that many people don't like, which is to store the fats. Okay, because of storing the fat, when people get fat, so what happens is that the body consists of many fat droplets inside the cell. So simply say, you can find it in our belly fat, belly fat, and underneath the skin. If you eat too much and then you do not have a lot of exercise, or you just sleep, so the number of energy, it will be converted into the fat, and it's going to be stored under the skin. Okay, that's why doing exercise is so important to keep your body in a good shape, because if not, welcome to become fatty. Okay, good. Next, yes, this one. So if you are eating too much, and then through the time, your fat will be stored here inside, so which is become the problem for you. So once again, keep healthy, doing exercise, sleep well. That's so important to have a good shape body. Okay, good. So this one is the location. Okay, so underneath the skin directly. Other than I told you before, I have told you before, this one has a function to insulate our body, to make it warm. Okay, next we have blood. Blood is also categorized as connective tissue. I think blood should be okay, because everybody know what blood is. And in terms of the production, blood made from our bone marrow, mostly in our long bone. So at the edge of the long bone, there are some what we call as bone marrow. Okay, so in bone marrow, especially the red bone marrow, that is the place for the production of the blood. Okay, now we have cartilage. Cartilage is it's cartilage, and cartilage we can find it in our knees, for example. Soft bone, simply say it's kind of soft bone. In our ear, that's also cartilage. Okay, and in terms of the type, cartilage has three types. They are hyalins, and then elastic, and the last is fibrocartilage. So now let's see one by one. So hyalin is like this, and in terms of the matrix, it has a very fine collagenous fiber, and also it looks glossy, white with the opaque appearance. So how it looks like, the structure is like this. It has matrix around here, and then it has lacuna. Lacuna is the location for the chondrocyte. So what is chondrocyte? Is the cell that making cartilage. So that is chondrocyte. And in terms of the location, cartilage can be found, especially the hyaline one, can be found at the end of long bone, and then the anterior end of the rib, like this. So the front part of the rib, this one is cartilage, hyalin, and then the functions still support and also protection. Next, we have another type of cartilage, which is the elastic one. So what is elastic one? Elastic is in terms of structure is almost similar with hyalin, but the things that makes different is about the plasticity, because this one is more elastic, and the chondroblast also making what we call as gel and also fibers. And the example of this the example of this type of hyalin, we can find it in our ear, which is the pinna or the external ear. Okay, so this is the type of hyalin, especially elastic one. We can find it in our ear. Next, we have fibrous. Fibrous it's slightly different because mostly we can find it internally, and the fibrous or fibrocartilage, in terms of structure, again the basic structure of cartilage almost similar. What makes different is only about the thickness of the collagen, and in this case the thick collagen fibers is predominant in this case. Okay, and then the function is to support, and also one of the unique things here is that they are be able to absorb the shock, so we can find it in our backbone. So one of the example is here in intervertebral disc. Okay, so this one is the example of the location of fibrocartilage. Okay, that's good. The last, I think, in connective tissue, we have what we call as bone or hard bone. And in terms of structure, we can see like this. The hard bone, from the outside, they will have what we call as periosteum, and then there is also blood vessel. There is bone tissues here. And yeah, the detail we are going to talk later in our skeletal system. But for now, maybe the things that you need to realize is that the bone, even though it's hard, seems like not moving, I mean, it's like a dead things, but actually it's alive, because why? Because it has a lot of cell here, and the cell, the name is what we call as osteocyte. Okay, so this type of cell, which is the cell that making the bone. And how to simplify or how to make this easy to imagine is that you can imagine a snail. Snail, when they grow, they will make a new shell. So it's almost similar. So the osteocyte working that way. Through the time, they will deposit many minerals, and then they will making the bone become stronger. Okay, so next we have the last tissue, which is the nerve one. So the nerve tissues, in general, we can find it in our brain and also our spinal cord, and the tissues made from the cell, what we call as neuron. And in terms of structure, we can see the neuron structure is like this. So I believe you know this very well. The receptor will be given here in the dendrites. Okay, and then we have also the cell body, we have nucleus, and then they will have the axon fiber, and then the axon will be wrapped by what we call as one cell, and the end will have what we call as axon terminal, and this axon terminal will meet another neuron, and then the gap here we call them as synapse, right? Synapse. And this is the example of the neuron. This one is the dendrites, and then the nucleus, and then the cell body, and really see the axon like this. And if we enlarge them, we'll find such a thing like that. There is a dendrite, cell body, and also we can have neuroglia. Neuroglia is like a cell in our neural system that support the neuron in terms of nutrients. Okay, axon should be okay. So now we will see the example of the type of the neuron. So in this case, we have what we call as 3 types of neuron in our, for example, reflex. What happened with our reflex? So the first neuron, we know what we call as efferent neuron, and then the next one we have association neuron, or another name we can call them as interneurons. And then the third, we have what we call as afferent transmission neuron, and this type of neuron is the neuron that accept the information. So in this case, for example, the receptor of the dendrites located in your skin. Okay, and then when you touching a hot object, and then the hot object will give some information, and then it will be transferred this way. And in interneuron, it will be process the information, and from there your body will give a response by sending another information to your muscle. So after that you can directly move your hand like that, or move your body part when it's attached to a hard object. Okay, so again, the type of this type of neuron, we have three: the afferent neuron, and then we have interneuron, and then the last is we have afferent transmission neuron. Okay, so in terms of the name, sorry, I forgot to give you the name. The afferent transmission neuron, the name is sensory neuron. Okay, so afferent transmission, the name is sensory neuron, and then the association neuron, the name is interneuron, and then the efferent transmission, we call them as motor neurons. Okay, so this is the nervous system that we have. It's very complicated, but the major one, we have CNS, or central nervous system, consisting the brain and spinal cord, and then we have what we call as peripheral nervous system. It consists of the neuron that is going out from our CNS to our entire body, and this PNS and also CNS is very vital, having a very vital roles in our body, because it's going to coordinate how our body responds. It's some of them like they coordinate how our eyes movement. Some of them also like regulate how the breathing mechanism and everything, and many things also like that. So when you have a problem with this neuron, or especially the PNS or CNS, most likely some of your body part will not work properly if you have some problem with neural system. Okay, so overall, that's all the things that I can tell you on this lecture. And for details, I have given also I have given you the textbook, so you can read further on the textbook for detailed information. Right, so again, thank you so much for listening and also pay attention to my lectures, and hopefully this video lecture will help you to learn and will help you also to understand how our body works. Okay, so thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time on another lecture video. So bye everyone, thank you so much, bye.